Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Lady Macbeth encouraging her husband not to give away what he's really thinking and plotting. They're planning to entertain Duncan for the night, put on a party, greet him as their honoured guest, while scheming to kill him in his sleep. It's one of the most useful quotes to look at if you're writing about the theme of appearance and reality in the play. Look at the imagery. The reference to the serpent, of course, is an allusion to the creation story in Genesis, the serpent being Satan or evil itself. The focus is on contrast. The word you could use is antithesis, which just means putting two contrasting ideas in the same sentence. Here, the beauty and innocence of a flower juxtaposed to the sinister evil of the serpent. Lady Macbeth is presented as being particularly duplicitous in the play, which means two-faced. She's good at putting on a show. Look at how she greets Duncan, for instance, when he arrives at their castle. She says, "All our service in every point twice done, and then done double, were poor and single business to contend against those honours deep and broad wherewith your majesty loads our house." She basically means here that if they did everything twice, then doubled that, it still wouldn't be enough to express the honour that it is to receive Duncan in their home. Okay, so he's the king, but his welcome speeches go, it's sickeningly ingratiating, isn't it? And a real contrast to the reality of what she's really thinking when she says, "The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements." One point we could make here is that there's so often a contrast in Macbeth between what characters say in a soliloquy, as Lady Macbeth is speaking here, and when they're talking to other characters, or how they speak to a private audience of one when compared to what they say in a public arena. This creates a lot of dramatic irony in the play. We, as the audience, at this point recognise the danger that Duncan is in, so when he arrives at the castle and says, "This castle hath a pleasant seat, the air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses," we're very aware that he's very much mistaken in his assessment of his overnight accommodation. Duncan, perhaps, is portrayed as a little gullible and naive in his inability to look beyond the surface and recognise the potential for others to betray him. He orders the execution of the old Thane of Cawdor, for instance, and says, "There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust." The irony is oozing out as he then names Macbeth his new Thane of Cawdor. Macbeth himself, of course, gets sucked into an illusionary mindset very early on in the play. The witches set out to present good as evil and evil as good when they say in Act 1, Scene 1, "Fair is foul and foul is fair." They are attempting to subvert the established moral order. The wilderness, represented by the Weird Sisters, the women of the heath, is attempting to overthrow civilization, as represented by the nobility in their castles. So when Macbeth meets the witches on the heath, Banquo is full of warning. He says, "But 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betray us in deepest consequence." That's what evil people and evil spirits do, he's saying. They trick you, entice you, ensnare you in their web of evil, then betray you once you start to trust them. Macbeth is less perceptive, less astute in his response to them. He weighs up whether what the witches have said is ill or good, and spends the rest of the day unable to discern which it is. His moral compass has been thrown, and as he eventually submits to the horrid image of murder, he brings the wild world of the heath into the civilised setting of his castle. The castle, what should be a place of safety and security, particularly following the defeat of the invading Norwegians and the traitors, is not as pleasant or as welcoming as Duncan thought it was. Look at Act 2, Scene 1. The battle's over, the danger's gone, the king's in bed, The gates are locked and Banquo is in the courtyard of his friend's castle. He's chatting to his son, Fleance. It's dark, as the stars aren't out. In typically Shakespearean style, they're talking about the time of day. It's kind of necessary if you're performing in an open-air theatre, as there's no lighting to show it. Suddenly, there's a noise and someone approaches them. Now, if you were Banquo, you'd have thought that you could be thinking it's another nobleman, a servant, your mate, Macbeth even. What's the problem? Nothing to be scared of, surely. Well, look at his reaction. Give me my sword. Who's there? He's seriously spooked. He's obviously still on edge. Why? Well, maybe he's not as naive and gullible as Duncan. Maybe he's sussed Macbeth out, having seen his reaction to the witches. He certainly realises that all is not as it seems. Appearance and reality.